them. And all this, it's not that it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, that makes total sense. Inference is going to dominate. All these companies with workloads on AWS, you can see them sort of adopting, just using what's there, just like you can get storage and you can get compute, you can get AI from Amazon. It's just another primitive. But implicit in that talk is the assumption that AI is slotting into the current paradigm. It's a feature you add, and we're going to provide that feature at a lower cost to everybody else. And again, they might be right. It is notable, though, as you're pointing out, it happens to perfectly align with the way Amazon functioned in the last paradigm. And what happens if the paradigm changes? The change in the paradigm is agents. And I hate using the word agents because it's so overused right now. Everyone's talking about it. But the idea is that instead of a person doing something, the AI is doing it. It's replacement. It's job replacement is the easiest way to think about it. And what's the limiting factor in job replacement? It's not cost.
Performance.
It's capability. Yes, it's can you actually do it well? And so the question is, Amazon is laser focused on cost for a functionality that is not yet capable enough. Where is it more likely the capability emerges on? Is it going to emerge on Amazon's cheaper, not as good Trainium chips running some random open source model because Amazon's models stink? Is it going to come out on an NVIDIA stack with OpenAI or Google with their model tuned to their chips, which, by the way, Google's cheap too. They already have the advantages Amazon has, except they're fully integrated from the get-go, and they're just better at AI than Amazon is. The problem is the lane Amazon's going for is the lane Google is super primed to dominate by not just being cheaper, but also being better. And in a world where the limitation on this new paradigm is being better, Amazon's just sort of hoping it comes to them. They're not really pursuing that at all. And again, it might work out for them, but they're a lot more like Apple than it might seem.
Exactly. I mean, they're definitely on the back foot here. Is there anything that Amazon could do in or potentially on the back foot if we enter a world where performance is what is the differentiating factor for various enterprises?
Well, so the defense people have to Amazon's earnings, which were disappointing as far as cloud growth, is they have a huge amount of demand that's not being filled because they don't have capacity, right? The problem is, why is that demand not being filled? That demand is not for Trainium chips. That demand's for NVIDIA chips. The problem is AWS can't get enough NVIDIA chips. And you have to ask, you look at the market share of who buys from NVIDIA relative to cloud market share, Amazon's is way lower compared to their cloud market share. And some of that is a function of Amazon prioritizing their own chip. I suspect a lot of it is NVIDIA sitting there and saying, everyone wants our chips. Why should we prioritize you when your entire goal is to
commodify us?
Yeah. It's like, we'll sell to Microsoft all the chips that they want. We'll definitely prop up the CoreWeaves of the world who do nothing but run NVIDIA and, then resell their capacity to Microsoft or whoever else it might be. And so there's a bit where Amazon's also sort of betting that NVIDIA gets sufficient supply to meet all the demand so that, NVIDIA's like, well, I guess we'll sell to you, Amazon, after all. And I mean, again, NVIDIA is selling to Amazon. It's not like they're completely shutting them out. They are selling to Google. But if you're in a situation where there is sort of limited supply of this resource, which is NVIDIA chips, it's no surprise Amazon has a backlog of customers who would love who want NVIDIA chips and they can't serve them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say looking at it all from a big picture standpoint, what I enjoyed about the article is one, it was a nice coda to our conversation about continued big tech dominance from the last episode we recorded. And it dovetails with some of what I said on that episode, where it's like, it seems unlikely that things are going to remain completely unchanged when we get 10 years down the road. Granted, AWS is not going to become Nokia. Apple is not going to become Nokia, but there are ways where things could really start to slide for
Right. Well,
at
it's
least
kind of like the
Apple.
Windows thing, right? Windows didn't go anywhere, but it
Yeah.
stopped being like super relevant and it wasn't growing like it used to sort of back in the day. Maybe that's an AWS story. People are locked in for the workloads that they have there. But in
Mm-hmm.
the long run, in the future, if you're a new company, like it's AWS has become Azure, where it used to be all the new companies were on AWS, but Microsoft grew a nice Azure business by basically carrying along all the enterprises who
Yeah.
realized the benefits of the cloud and they trusted Microsoft. They already had their stuff. So Microsoft sort of carried them along to the cloud and they sort of built it up together. And Microsoft had a very nice Azure cloud business, basically serving all the people that weren't hip enough to be in AWS or so these old enterprises. That's Amazon's goal for AI. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
look, if you're a new company, you're probably going on Microsoft or an OpenAI, which is running on Microsoft, or you're going with Google. Maybe you're going with Anthropic, who's running on Amazon, but that's, even there, like you're getting performance, but it's very expensive from an API
Yeah.
perspective. Amazon's real goal and the whole Trainium thing is that we have all these companies they're going to come along to AI. Their data's already here. They'll go with us. It's really a total role reversal from the cloud 7-8 years ago.
Look, betting on inertia has served Microsoft fairly well
That's
over
right. It
the
worked out
last
very
several
well for
decades.
Microsoft. So maybe it's not the worst thing
Could
in the
be
world.
worse.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because what you were writing about with the winner's curse, it's like half strategy and half psychology, because I understand why these companies would look backward and think, all right, this is going, everything that served us well in the current era is going to continue serving us well. And also, it's, in Apple's case, far more affordable for us to continue to bet on this strategy than to bet on a complete unknown that we may not be competent enough to execute on. And so it's just, it clarifies the risks that these companies are taking as they move forward. And also, it is like you trace how companies end up going this direction. Like in Microsoft's case, Microsoft was an example that bet on its strengths and lost and ultimately had to pivot. But would Microsoft have been able to pivot its strategy under Satya Nadella without the years-long humbling that they experienced under Ballmer, trying to double down on all the Windows advantages? I would guess not. Just from a cultural standpoint, it's really hard for them to make that commitment until they kind of banged their head against the wall over and over again and lost. And so that's some of what I see happening at Apple. And I know less about AWS, but it seems like a similar story in that respect as well.
Yeah,
Does
well,
that
Andy
resonate
Jassy
with you at all?
Andy Jassy at Amazon, their CEO, was the longtime former head of AWS. So
Exactly.
they are for sure, it's the same guy doing the same strategy. You do see it much more starkly with Apple. The real thing with Apple's earnings call was it was very clear we're not changing anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, it's just like we're just gonna do better. I analogized it on Dithering to like an NBA team, a
I
favorite
heard it.
losing game one of a series, right? It's like, do we
Yeah.
adjust or do we execute better?
Of all the Tim Cook criticism that you've put forth over the last year and a half here, nothing was more withering and damning than comparing him to Mike Budenholzer after Game One of a Milwaukee Bucks series. But
The
yeah,
Bucks
I
would
mean that
lose
does
game
seem like
one
what's
every
happening.
series. It was so infuriating.
And there
But
would be obvious adjustments on the board that would not be explored. So perhaps Apple will do better than the Milwaukee Bucks at some point over the next couple of years. But yeah, that's sort of what is happening. They're saying, look, we had the right idea with Apple Intelligence. Now we just need to execute on it. And perhaps they'll be right. I mean, that's the thing is it could end up, we could get 5-10 years down the line and look back and Apple could be the Sony amidst a bunch of different companies that spent themselves into oblivion here. So that's on the table as well.
Oh no, that's the thing. That's why it's sort of like hard to write about. Both companies may end up being right? Like it's definitely possible. We'll see what happens, how it goes. But yeah, the Tim Cook's not changing crap.
Mm-hmm.
Word adjustment there. And maybe at this point, it's for the best that he seems determined to stick around for a while. Everyone talks about he wants to stay till they launch their glasses or whatever it is, because your Satya Nadella point is a very, very good one. It can be very clear from the outside what needs to happen, but
Mm-hmm.
for a very successful company to change track requires it just can't be done in the midst of success.
Yeah.
There is a real psychological and cultural component to it, and all the things that got you to where you are going to rule what is culture. Culture is the remnants of good decisions that become part of the company's psyche. This is how we do it. You don't ask why you do it. It's just the way it's done. And those things don't get actually challenged or questioned until you hit real obstacles. And to your
Mm-hmm.
point, the Siri thing was super embarrassing. At the end of the day, they're still trying to screw John Gruber because he had the gall to say it was embarrassing and bad. Like,
Yeah.
that's not a company that sounds very humble or is learning from what they did, right?
Well, and also
And
customers aren't changing
they're still,
phones in the
no, to
wake
your
of the
point,
Apple
they're still
Intelligence
having
thing.
huge quarters, right?
Yeah.
And some aspect of this is a pull forward from the tariff stuff. They cut prices hugely in China because of government subsidy program. There's a bit going into this that is going to show up in future quarters, of sales that don't happen. So,
Mm-hmm.
people shouldn't get too excited about the numbers. But at the day, they're still really good numbers, right? Like it's to the point, Jason's before. There's the short term, medium term, long term, and the risk is, I just think you can disagree. They face very significant medium term and long term questions, but
Yeah.
is it possible for them to address those if the addressing means sacrificing the short term when the short term is going so well? And it's hard to talk about because by definition, if you say they're in trouble, you're going to look implicit in that is you're going to look stupid for the next 5 years at least, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, when does the medium term kick in? And so, but yeah, they're not going to change anything, not until there's a change in leadership. I think that's pretty clear.
No, sir. And I think you nailed it a couple months ago. The Intel example would be what's apt if Apple is going to run into trouble 10 years down the line. Like, you're not going to be able to see it in terms of the quarter to quarter, year to year performance for a little while here because they're going to remain dominant. I will just say, as an iPhone user, I'm more open than ever to shifting, in large part because of what I talked about earlier with the core competencies. Like, there's different software doesn't work as well as it used to. And I've always heard great things about Samsung and some of what's happening on Android. So I'm open to it, which is not
This
where
would be
I've been for about 10
This
years.
would be great pod content. We need you to switch to Android.
I think I might do it just for the pod and just to stick it to Apple, who I feel like has gotten complacent over the last 5 years here. And I want to make them pay somehow, but I don't want to give up those sweet, sweet blue bubbles. So it will still be scary, but perhaps we'll explore that possibility in the fall. For now,